Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, Ed Fields. Listen, do me a favor, Nick. Can you swing that mic over to young Nick? You got two Nicks.
Hey, listen.
Two Nicks in the house. You got Dominic, and you got Nick. Anyway, so want to warn everyone, and it wasn't deliberate, and I'm not going to say where I got it from, but it is a holiday tomorrow. Lift up your heads and all that stuff. And I have to admit, this is the first time in... Oh, well, no, that's not true, because I've had wine. I've had a beer. Now, there you go.
Was it by one of our sponsors?
It was by one of our sponsors. It was a K-Lick. I had the Heineken. I mean, a K-Lick, but it's the same people who make it. So. But that's what was available. That was offered me. If it was any other company had offered me a beer, I would have rejected it.
Lies.
Not of opportunity. I like
it. So anyway, I had a beer. Candy's with us today as well. And, of course, Rogan Smith, the winner of this year's Icon Award for the best media personnel.
In your head.
No. I'm not acknowledging Jerome. So I don't care that this year at the Icon Award.
Let me see that. Oh,
no.
Go on. I'm sorry.
At the Icon Award, Miss Rogan Smith flew away with the winning trophy,
all right.
and want to congratulate her, as we predicted on Thursday that she would win the Icon Award. If any of you heard about Jerome Sawyer winning,
it was a lie.
That's fake news.
Fake news.
Yeah. That's the problem with the whole thing right off the top. This whole thing is fake.
Fake news.
Jerome is our boy, but he teeth him now. He got in the way.
They robbed me.
Yeah, he got robbed.
Yeah.
No, you didn't get robbed. You won.
Right.
The red stuff is just fake news.
Oh, yeah,
so I just want to say congratulations to Rogan Smith.
You see what you're
That
holding
looks so
there?
heavy.
That's my Oscar
Yeah.
that I got when I was in California.
It's beautiful.
Oh, Lord.
It's the real thing.
Oh, so you knew ahead of time you were going to win. Okay, no problem.
It looks heavy.
Because you see, they wouldn't come up off the trophy. They give it to that boy.
They give it to Jerome.
Say
No,
best
excuse me. When we're not acknowledging people, we don't say
call
their
name. You say
They give it to that boy.
They give it to that boy. That's Soy boy.
And you know, that's all I can say about that. I'll throw it a little for the sake of the people who believe Jerome win. I'll say congratulations, Jerome.
Yes, Jerome.
Because I don't want him to be on my bad side. You know
when we called him to come back on the show, he'd be like, "Oh no, I ain't all that."
But when he comes, he will be questioned as to why he thieved the trophy. And I know it was a fix. I know that. We know that. Everyone know that. He know people.
Oh, that's too funny.
You don't know the people he know.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I didn't. What happened is, if I'd known in advance, way in advance, not just whatever, in advance that you were nominated, I would have handled that for you.
You'd handle that.
Yeah, but anyway, don't worry about
this
it.
fixing of this rigging.
Yeah, everything got to be rigged.
That was good, man.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So I was in. I didn't see any of it. I was in Habaco.
Postings
I gave you a little
Instagram
shout out on the
and
red
stuff.
carpet. That was so nice.
You gave me a shout out?
I did.
Okay.
It's very humble of you.
Yeah.
Did you give Nick? Because you know the deal was Nick, me, and Bingham.
That's if I want. Well, I did win.
Okay.
I did win. I figured.
That's right.
Yeah, you know that we have the award right here.
In fact, next time, because you'll probably be nominated again, I would prefer if you just give you a thank you speech at the before the actual meeting. All right, so that's good. You had a good weekend. Mm-hmm. Listen, I went to Abaco, and I tell you, man, this town, I don't know. I was in Marsh Harbor. That's where I landed. And between Marsh Harbor and the place where I have a little place is 30 miles long and 30 minutes. 2 car. That's how much cars I run into. 2.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Bad road.
It's great.
Was the road smooth?
Great.
No.
It's a good road. It's a good road.
Really?
I go 80 miles an hour.
No, don't promote that.
You want to say
that?
Don't promote that.
Well, I do.
Yeah, but don't.
I'm not lying. I'm not a liar like most people.
Come back to bite you.
Why?
But yeah, don't
What, they're going to come in to give me a ticket?
No, if something happens later on, they're going to say he is known for speeding.
Fine.
On these roads.
Everyone goes 80 there.
Yeah,
It's
let's
no one
not
on the
go
road.
80.
Well,
Let's-
2
I don't
cars.
care.
If you get in an accident, it's with yourself.
And which
You don't even feel like 80. It's just
Sometimes
like the
that's
States.
what
You don't feel like listen. It's a big open road, just like in the States. You don't feel like you're going there.
that's okay.
But
Trust
you
me.
are.
It's a smooth road. It's actually.
I don't like those island.
It's actually
those
remarkable.
Island roads.
Yeah, I don't like them either.
It's also very straight.
Mm-hmm.
Except there are a couple, but it's
For that
very
same
straight.
reason, you just
No, the problem with
wanna
Dallas
go, you just
is
want to speed.
the curves, but You speed in the state. You can go 75 in the States on the freeway, and there's other cars.
Yeah.
Okay, this way at least if you kill anyone, you kill yourself.
Unless somebody comes speeding out of a little
There's no little.
out of a little juk bush or something like that.
Or someone
Well,
on a
what are they
bike
doing
just
in
coming
that
out of
On a bike
nowhere.
just comes
What are they doing in that
Little
bush?
raccoon or
Okay.
something.
You know,
Yeah.
people be crabbing and things.
Crabbing?
A kid trying to get a soccer ball.
They
I
don't
don't
do
know.
that. But so anyway, 2 cars on the way back. Four cars.
That's too
And I
many.
thought to myself, jeez,
What am I doing here?
why? No. What am I not doing here?
Whoa. Because
You know?
that's
No,
the
that'd get
kind
old
of
quickly.
interaction you like.
No, I believe after about a week,
You get tired.
listen. Let me tell you something about because it happened to me in Kamalami Key. I was in Kamalami Key. I was lying there in the bed, and I remember saying to my wife, "Do you know what I'm doing right now? I'm counting the thatch. There's no TV." It got to the
That's
point where I was
boring.
counting, like I was picking cocoa plums every day, like a
that's
mission. But no, the point of the matter is that no, it is. But you know what? We live in wherever we live, we get carried away with that lifestyle, right? But I can tell you one thing: anyone who goes to those islands and spends an inordinate amount of time there, they ain't interested in coming back.
It's
all about-
I can't say
I
the
You
beg
ain't
to
been there for
differ.
an inordinate amount of time.
I can't
I
say
talk
the
about
same.
the inordinate.
What's an inordinate amount of time
Okay.
to you?
Well, a month.
I've been to
No.
family when I was younger.
Yeah,
When
that
it's the
doesn't
teenage
count.
years, yes, I'd go to Andros, and let me tell you something. Only because my cousins were there, we would have fun. But let me tell you something, that gets
First of
old.
all-
But you
First of all-
have to you know
First of
yourself
all,
too
let me
and
say
what
this.
you can
First of all, and I
what
don't
you
want to be
into and what
insulting.
you're not into.
Andros doesn't really count.
Andros does
But
count.
anyway,
So shut up.
okay.
Andros does
Okay.
count.
All right, but all I'm saying
Abaco is that
first
much
of all,
better?
no, let me just say this to you. As a child,
feel
Andros
me?
means. I mean, the Family Islands are not
Don't-
the place. But if you are, when you get to an adult, like when you get to my age, when you get to it's more settled. The only thing that's keeping you from being in those places, because you have access. You can get to Nassau when
Edward,
you're
that
bored.
gets old very quick.
Yeah.
You
You
just
don't
go
get
in.
old?
You just
Go
go
into
into
work.
Family Island.
No,
That don't
that
get
too.
old. I love earning.
Okay, well,
I
good.
love earning.
Yeah,
No.
I don't love earning.
You don't?
No,
Okay.
I have to earn.
I like
I don't love
I love
earning.
earning. I love earning.
I
I
have
like
to be
earning
fair.
if I could be
Alternative.
home and earning.
but I love earning. He like to earn money.
That passive
No,
earning.
I have to earn money. I'm not money centric.
You don't have to earn money.
Well, how do you pay
He's got
for
a
the
You
family.
bills?
don't have to. No, you don't have to. You don't have
Oh,
to do
just put
Well,
it-
anything.
at the
That's true.
level,
That's true.
at any
That's true.
level
Listen,
at
next
which,
week, if
Yeah.
you see him out on the street, come a couple dollars.
That's the consequences of
No,
not doing
I
it.
always tell people that too. It's like the
You got
level
to.
of that you want to give your family.
You go
Listen,
you go on
I
a
think
family
You
island and live
need,
your
if
simple
you're
life.
in
People-
the basic, I know plenty of people who
people
moved
who-
over there, man. And it's basic stuff you need. Basics. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't need any, you ain't got no movies. You better go with your Netflix.
If we had like a super fast ferry to come from like Andros or
Never
something
think
like
it's called
that,
a plane.
a super fast ferry, you know what I mean? I could live there and then come zoop to
Bahamas
Nassau
here,
to work
Bahamas
and
here,
then
30
zoop
minutes.
to go back.
Bahamas here, 30 minutes.
It ain't even all that.
I don't know what that means, but it's
To go to Andros?
No, to go to Abaco.
Oh, you
30
mean Abaco?
minutes.
I thought you were talking about
30
Andros.
minutes. 30 minutes. For the Bahamas here was fairly on time and everything. I didn't have any problems.
You probably
Abaco
spend
Airport
more
is nice.
time in Nassau traffic to get to your job than commuting
Correct.
from the family
Listen to
island.
me. Not only that 30 minutes, that 30 miles, which took me about 30 minutes to get, that's like from here to Suvalu.
I didn't know it was
In Nassau.
reliable.
During
The road, is it always
during
reliable?
No, I'm
The
talking
school year.
about to fly into another island.
Anyway, I'm not.
During
I
the
was
school
really-
year, it takes me more than an hour to travel less than 4 miles.
and that's
It don't
fun.
ta- it don't take
It's
me
not
that.
boring.
I
It's fun.
love it.
Yes, it's so not boring.
No, the family islands. I mean, that's
I
good
can't-
for
I
a 3
can't
day,
live
4
on the
day
family
getaway.
island.
I can't live there.
You can.
My husband could, but
The
I can't.
novelty wears off very quickly. You go.
Well, you guys say that now. You guys are all young, full of life.
Yeah,
You have-
he finished.
What is
yeah,
he
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about?
Yeah.
He's in the twilight
Hold
of
on
his
a second.
career. You know
Hold
what
on,
I mean?
hold on.
Like,
What did he just say? Y'all are also young.
We're
Yeah.
not you.
Yeah.
He's talking about being
No,
candy.
what is he saying?
He said
You're
we're
full
young
of
and full
life.
of life, so that won't appeal to us.
To
But
him, you're
since-
like
no,
ancient.
no. He said you're already
Yeah,
looking at me and candy.
he's just
Right,
trying to
where
get.
you coming from?
And he's just trying to get some
You're
action.
gonna settle
He's
down.
trying to get some action.
Yeah. You want to watch the sunrise? I understand.
That's his life.
Listen, let me tell you, boy.
You mash up fast.
I went, and all I did, you know what I did? I stared. Have you stared lately?
At what?
See?
Just
You
stare
see
out into the
exactly.
thing.
This is
What
why
am I
he said
staring
what he
at?
said.
No, I mean, have you ever just stared out into the, to the
great
Yeah,
beyond.
Into the
when you have
abyss.
your little moments and stuff.
Anyway,
When your staring
you know what?
happens,
You know what?
occurs
Let
a
me
little
tell you
bit more
something.
than
You know
Oh
what?
my
The hell with
God.
y'all.
No, your
Y'all don't
staring
get
just
it.
happens a little
You
bit
don't
more.
get it.
It
You don't
occurs
get
a
it.
bit
You
more.
don't get
That's
it.
it.
I tell you,
See?
man,
Green Day,
it's a peaceful thing. It's some fishing. Do some fishing.
That gets so old.
You know.
I think
I've
that's
always been
beautiful.
Like a city
You're
girl.
telling me. Let me ask you a question. Let's be honest now. You're telling me that getting up every morning, getting in a car, driving in traffic for God knows how long.
Ain't no more traffic. School closed.
But it wasn't. It was closed this morning, and it was traffic.
There's no traffic for me.
And it can be traffic going home.
Well, that's good.
And-
You're,
and-
yeah,
and-
that's west.
and,
I don't know
um,
what's going on out there.
And then dealing. See, by the way, you know the
Out
other
east
thing.
is zero.
Let me tell you, maybe this is
Perfecto.
because of the nature of my job. While I was in Hebico, okay, where I was, I think I
Hebico.
saw a total on a daily basis of around 7 people.
Oh, see, I
Is that good?
Great.
Is that what you-
It
oh,
was great.
yeah.
It was
You
great.
mind talking this foolishness here?
It was
You know
great.
that would get old very quickly.
Anytime you want to see people get on a plane, come. And then come and be disgusted by them and get back.
Like I said, he's in the twilight of
Next
his
thing
life.
you
He
know-
wants
Yeah,
the
that's
solitude.
Next
You know,
thing you know,
the
Well,
peace.
you know, I'm a
Ed is
recluse.
a part of some association. He gets himself on a board or
Yeah,
something because
he
he's
can't-
got to
he
be
have to
doing
fill the
something.
boredom.
Yeah.
Yes,
Listen
you
to
will.
me. Do you
He's
know
in
what I
charge
do
of
on the
landscaping.
weekend?
Local
of the
government,
community.
Exactly.
Do you know that I'm a recluse generally?
I know.
Okay.
I don't think you are.
He is.
I've only seen you in
To
this
an
building,
extent.
so I mean,
Yeah. On the weekend,
Yeah.
Jack, I don't leave my block.
I think I'm a hybrid.
Okay. I don't leave my block. I don't want to
You're
be. I don't want to
I'm
be.
a hybrid, yeah.
I don't want to be. You know.
No, you know like how when you say you go into the government offices, it's like theatrics for you?
Oh, God.
I think that's how I feel when I'm on the road. So it's theatrics for me to watch the different drivers, and I like that sort of stuff.
I am going to do. When we next week or the week after, we got to do some stuff here because what I want to do, and we're going to get a lot of flack. I don't know if you have the stomach for it. You talk about, the government offices. Well, the theater is over for me now. The single largest inhibitor to progress in this country is the civil service.
Oh.
And to the extent that even you can be away from that, where you don't have to be engaged in those processes. I don't know what it is like in the States. I can't vouch for what goes on in the civil service domain there, but it's just a nightmare. Everything you do, is touched by these services, and it's crazy. You know what it is to go. The property tax office. You know where that
Yeah.
is, Rogan Smith? Inland Revenue.
Yes.
Oh, Michael.
Have you ever tried to get there in the day?
It's not an issue.
Well,
Oh.
it depends on which way
No,
you go.
what's
okay,
If
it's not an
you're
issue.
going
Okay,
straight
okay.
down.
You have a jet. You got a hovercraft or
I
something?
mean, why?
No, man,
why?
you
How much
go
time
to
have you
the
been down to the
highway?
Inland Revenue
Where are
office?
you coming from?
Twice.
Which way you coming from?
Yeah. Which way? I mean, are you coming?
Okay, you know what? I just
Yeah,
remembered.
no, but
it's a
that's a
dream.
good question.
That-
Which way?
which
are
way
you
I
coming
tried
from?
both ways.
What's the both ways?
Well, actually, there are 3 ways. There are
Yeah,
3 ways.
Exactly.
There's Mila Butler.
Go over
Right.
There's
Gladstone
Blue
Road.
Hill, and there's Gladstone
Gladstone
Road.
Road, and then
And
make
once
your
you hit a
left
certain point, the traffic starts to back up.
If you go up Gladstone Road, now Gladstone
Same
Road is
thing.
long, you make that left. It's
Once you
smooth
get to a
sailing.
certain point, once you get to a certain point, it
I
starts
turn
to
off
back up.
before that drama.
You can't turn off. You got to be on the main road
No,
to get
I'm
to
turning
there.
off into the corner for Inland Revenue before I get into
No,
any bunch of traffic.
it backs up before that. Try
man,
it
for me.
out tomorrow.
No, I don't know.
Anyway, you'll try tomorrow because it's a breeze. It's a breeze, so it wouldn't be a problem.
Now, hold on.
Do
What
you try
time?
it?
What time did you go?
Try it anytime.
No, man. It's
I'm
not
telling
anytime.
you, Carmichael Road has got to be the worst road in Nassau right now. Okay?
It's
Period.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say.
I don't dispute that.
So you go anytime.
I have to go.
dispute-
Pick a time.
I go all the way around.
Pick a time and then come back tell me.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's where I run into your brother
Oh.
who parked in my spot when I was trying to change my tire. We'll be back in a minute. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith. Our guest this afternoon is going to be the bishop, the most, I don't know what you say, reverend, but Bishop Simeon Hall, who's going to talk to us about 2 things, actually. One, we're going to talk about, he was selected to be on the commission, and let me get this right, I want to make sure I got it right, to be on the commission, the Carapan Commission, that deals with the marijuana deal. So we'll talk to him about that. Also, it'll be interesting to get his insight onto where we've come since independence You know, it's a tricky thing, this independence thing. But we'll see what he thinks about independence.
Yeah, I'd
45
like to
years
hear-
later?
Yeah, I'd like to hear his.
45 years later. And you know, it's interesting, Rogan, we even like with this, it's interesting how this thing with the marijuana thing fits into this discussion, because here it is, 45 years later, and essentially a lot of what we do, he was a member of the CARICOM Commission on marijuana over the last 2 years, a lot of what we do is still really controlled by the points of view, perspectives of other countries. So like even this thing with marijuana, right? The reason for the most part that the world has its rules on drugs
It's because
is
of the
because of the
US.
United States.
Yep.
Right.
And now they're loosening up. So now the world is now saying, okay, we can loosen up. Nobody was really pushing this agenda.
Well, Europe had some independence, but they didn't have. They're big fish, so they can do what they want,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But
Pushing the agenda
the
like
reality is, and I saw it. You wanted to say something funny? When I was in Abaca, I was watching this program. It was called Weedakit. I don't know what it means, but anyway, I guess
Like
etiquette. and
weed
weed.
Etiquette with
etiquette.
weed.
But you know
Yeah.
what they were talking about? They were talking about how many people in a minority or minorities are involved in the legal industry. Very few. So all the people who were going to jail, okay, all the people who were
The
dealing
majority
in
of
the
them
in the
are
neighborhoods
minorities.
with the majority minority, there's something like there's 30% of this was the stats. 30% of the people who are say drug dealers were minorities. 57% of the people in jail, in state jails, are minorities, and higher in federal prisons. Okay, and all of those people they literally, if you go to these conventions and these industry things about marijuana sales, etc., there are no minorities. So remember we were talking about how if you make it legal here, what's going to happen to the guy who, albeit illegally, is making a living off of this product? He's going to get squeezed out. What's he going to do? What aspect? How does he now fit into the economic pie? But it always happens where the big guys get it, and this is how we ended up in this scenario.
I have very little sympathy. So
Well, I mean, fine. I'm just saying, you got. I don't know how you take a scenario where, okay, so Nick today is okay, and he can do whatever he wants and sell.
Illegally.
And then meanwhile, no. I mean, today, if it was if it made legal, it was
Right.
made legal today. And yesterday, the same guy is in jail. It's and again, I'm not even justifying the illegality of it. I'm trying to figure out this whole jail thing associated with it. It's a ticket. It shouldn't end your life. That's what I'm saying. I'm not espousing the benefits of not smoking or smoking or selling, not selling, but just why would you incarcerate people? And it is decimated minority America.
Yeah.
Unfairly. You get caught with, I think they said, how much ever it was, 20 to 40 years in jail
Wow.
in states like Georgia.
wait, but how much you have to have on you? That's important.
I think
to
it was
know.
like
had to be
over a
considerable-
pound or some number.
Yeah.
Is it a pound?
I think it was. I forgot how much it was. I want to say over 100 grams or something like that. Florida has some same draconian. I think they're changing a little bit now.
Yeah.
But it's almost like an insidious. By the way, one of the things I remember my father, who was a policeman, showing me a tape with like a vampire. I think it was called Scared Stiff or something like that. It was about
Scared Straight.
Scared Straight. It was about not smoking marijuana. It was like a 1950s film. It was like
You said a vampire?
But the thing is, what the big thing was too? How about if you got to watch this because the minorities, they'll smoke and go after the white women.
Oh.
It's a whole
Boogeyman syndrome.
yeah, it's a whole plot. And you know why it came about? If you do the research, this is the insidious part. It came about because hemp,
Let me see. Yes.
right? Hemp, and look at this, see if you can find this. Hemp was a ubiquitous product. Clothing, rope, all sorts of
Yeah.
things. And then,
Jewelry.
what is it? Not DuPont and others discovered nylon. Okay? And they literally lobbied to get hemp outlawed for the benefit of nylon. So it's all money. It's all about
It's all corporate espionage.
yeah. And it's and then people suffer. So you had the alcohol thing, and I feel so happy now that we could at least be talking about this, Candy, because many years ago, if you talked about it, oh, well, he smoked dope.
Yeah.
But,
Just by talking about it, you smoke dope.
But a lot of people who do promote it do, or
fine.
they have smoked it.
Fine.
So I mean, I can
No, but
understand
they did it. But they did
association.
it. But they were like, even if you didn't, you did. Okay. So the thing is, look at alcohol, right? Alcohol was, I forget the years that it was under prohibition.
It was the 20s.
It was in the 20s, right? 20s and 30s, or anyway, it was,
Yeah.
because Franklin Roosevelt, I think, it came about when he. So at the time, you had about maybe 200-300, what they call the untouchables, who were the cops went after alcohol, because the only place it was banned was in the United States. So what happened was, when they realized this is ridiculous, people are shooting each other up in the road and the street for booze, and no one's stopping drinking, they repealed it. And then all they had to do is redeploy 200-300 people. Well, it is so big of a thing now, globally. Do you know how many people are working in the anti-drug business?
I've what I've said, and I've said this repeatedly on this show. If we're in the business now of liberalizing drugs, then we need to just liberalize everything.
I agree.
Everything. Now, there are people who are going to say, oh, no, you're going too far. But the fact of the matter is, I've said to you, there are some people who want to be in their home and tote
Sniff
coke.
glue.
They want to sniff some coke, or they want to do whatever.
Some heroin.
So they're not, or they're on the crystal meth and they don't want marijuana. So then why are they now going to be discriminated against?
I don't disagree with you. Okay, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I know the principle. I understand the principle. The thing is if you look at, when we first started this show, one of the first things we looked at was when we were dealing with this was Portugal, where they essentially decriminalized everything.
Yeah.
Okay, and what they found was very simple. It's there to study. Was that all of the things that needed to go up went up, and all the things that needed to go down went down. So, addiction went down. Transmission of STDs and HIV went down. Okay, that police budgets went down. They were able to redivert the efforts that they spent on more serious crimes. Like, by the way, robberies went down. Why? Because people didn't steal to buy drugs. A whole lot of positive things happened.
But
and there's nothing positive about people taking drugs.
No, it's not. I was about to say, and I'm sure there are lots of studies and research that can prove why, obviously, keeping this thing outlawed is best. Because, people are just destroying neighborhoods with their drug addiction, that sort of thing.
That isn't how they destroyed the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods were destroyed by
People
the war on
stealing
drugs, by people stealing, because it's illegal. Neighborhoods aren't being destroyed because of alcohol.
Right.
People are being destroyed, people who individually take alcohol, but whole neighborhoods aren't to be destroyed because there are people dealing booze, okay, whereas before that was a big problem. So we just, I think when it comes to individual choices, that we have to get government out of people, making individual choices. You can practice a whole lot of things in your home that people will condemn.
Yes.
More than just government.
But all I always say, too, is you can do whatever you're doing as long as it does not affect Organ Smith.
That's exactly.
So
Don't
you
be
want
doing
to
in the
smoke?
road.
Don't
Smoke home.
smoke that. I almost cursed just
Yeah.
now. Do not smoke that crap
Don't
around
smoke
me.
the-
I hope you never bought anybody any alcohol.
I don't
drink.
even drink alcohol.
I
Do you-
know,
have
but
you ever
do
bought someone
send
a drink?
somebody a bottle of wine or
No.
something like that?
No.
I can
You've
check.
never
Yes,
purchased
you
a drink
can.
for me?
I could check.
Yes, I
could
did buy a
check.
bottle of wine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was when you retired. Retired in quotes.
You drug dealer, you.
Promoting alcohol?
You drug- No, she's not
No,
promoting, because I don't care about that.
I'm
Yeah,
just-
I
No,
know.
I think
But
that's
the
probably
point-
one of the
but
only
the
times
point-
I've done
but
that.
the point
With
we're
champagne.
making, but
yeah.
the point you're making is absolutely correct. That when you're going to do these things, you do them in the privacy of your home. You don't do them when you're driving. You don't do them when you're in public.
Yeah.
And yes, I know enforcement, but guess what? They were enforcing not doing it, right?
Regulation, right?
And that didn't work either. So there's always a.
And the thing, this notion that, once you make these things legal, that, everybody's going to run out and go smoke and
Well,
go
Nick
do all
is.
of these things. It's You
Well,
know,
one
if
of the
you have-
Knicks anyway.
I don't think that's going to happen to you. I don't think that's something that, okay, well, the minute that, the signature is signed, whatever has happened, boom. Oh, yes, now I can
It's
actually
like
go and...
gambling, right?
It's like the gambling. I don't think anybody
Who
ran
wasn't
to the
interested
number.
in
Exactly.
doing that went out and got numbers.
No.
It's just so that now the people
But
that are
now-
sneaking to do it are able to just do it.
Right. They can quantify the people who were doing it before.
Exactly.
And that's, by the way, an
I don't
interesting
know
thing. They did, our good friend Mwale did a poll I just saw recently on the support for medicinal marijuana, and I'll get to why I did the quotas.
I support
85%.
medicinal purposes.
85%. Throw in referendum on that.
Yeah.
Now, the medicinal thing is a joke to me, and that's why I was happy to see. We were trying to get Sir Arthur on, by the way, and you saw Sir
He
Arthur's
supported
comments.
it. He said legalize it.
He said, supports medical cannabis use, also supports eventual recreational use, right? Now, the reason why he's saying that, I'm
We
not,
gotta take a
okay?
break.
We're going to take a break?
Yeah,
Take a
it's
break,
after.
and we'll be back after that with the news. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith, Icon winner 2018. Nick Liebman. It's funny.
You
The
have all
union,
kind of
the
people.
union guys, they couldn't pronounce Alan Liebman's name, and they would always say Lieberman.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That still
Yeah,
happens now.
that's
Yeah.
In college, for me, that still happens.
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Lieberman.
Tom
Why? So
Bastian
they would add
and Alex Thompson would go, Miss Lieberman.
Yeah.
And Alan would
He's
just say,
answer?
my name
That's
was
like
Lieberman.
Lieberman. But like the Cinderella.
Okay, no, I don't know. Okay,
So
so.
when they're reading the name and then they add something that shouldn't be there anyway.
Okay. Oh, like
Oh,
Candelaria.
yeah,
last week.
Cinderella.
Okay, yeah.
Ketchup.
All right, it's too much weed. That's what happened. All right, and I noticed Dom is wearing the green headphones in celebration of the weed.
And the green shirt.
the green shirt. And so we got Nick who's on the thing. I have no idea where Ken is, but I have a feeling he's going to get a stash.
No mind.
He's.
Can't
You
take
better
some
leave
time.
Ken in his business.
Anyway, so Candy, how are you doing?
I'm good.
What's
I'm
going
good.
on?
I had a good weekend too. Full of activities. Not, well, anyway,
Yeah.
because he
shortens you.
he shortens my segment.
Yeah,
Let me
go on,
dig
just
right
do
into
it.
it.
He already started.
And I
Yeah, 'cause
already
once you see
wasted
me,
time.
and if I get to half this Gatorade, you're gone.
Yeah. Anyway, for the listeners that from last week, I had mentioned that my father-in-law had passed away, and so we were talking about the whole when you have a parent and it's a child-to-parent kind of relationship that may have been broken, and you may have wanted to repair it somehow before, because their parents are getting older, and I wanted to though, Rogan, because we were talking about how you didn't. For people who probably had like abusive parents or parents who just weren't very nice or neglected or things like that.
Yes.
I wanted to make a point, and my point last week was to say that for some reason, and this might be psychology, some psychology behind it, but I think there's something intrinsically connected with a child to parent relationship, not necessarily the other way around. Not parent to child, but a child to parent. I mean, whether it's, a dysfunctional relationship, an abusive one, mentally, physically, emotionally, for whatever reason, a child still seeks some sort of relationship. They may go off for a while, but I think it's always there. I think there's something that is always there. And when the parent dies and you've never been able to reconcile that in whatever way that you could, or the child could, I think it leaves a heaviness for the child. And I know you can't do anything about if the parent doesn't want to reciprocate, but there's something about child to parent that is just, I think,
I totally
and you
agree.
have to do, and the child has to do it for themselves. Like they, you know what I mean? Like they can't do it for, I want to do this so that my parent can be proud of me, or my parent can love me, or my parent, or
I think there's something in that child that's always seeking that love, that
Always,
approval from the
yeah.
parent, no matter how much of a screw up that parent may have been.
Yeah.
I've seen so many instances in my family and friendships where the child's, the parent wasn't good towards the child, and no matter how bad that parent was, no matter how many times they lied about coming, it doesn't matter, that child still seeks out that connection, that bond with that parent.
And that carries on into adulthood, and that affects relationships, like all of your relationships, whether it's, with a romantic relationship or then you have children.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's important to not repair, but kind of just reconcile those feelings within yourself in order for you to move on. So that was a point that I wanted to make last week that I wasn't able to because my segments are always so short.
So short these days, eh? Name that one.
But then moving on to this, after passing, when your parent passes and your parent isn't married, like if your parents aren't married and then they're not currently with anybody, boy, that could be rough because then now the children have to step up to the plate and
to carry out the wishes, and if the wishes were expressed too. Yeah. Now that's a whole nother story. If you are just working off of what you thought your parent may have wanted. I blame the parents.
You got to put it down in the will. You got to have an
but
executor.
Yes, and that's what
that's all. And it doesn't just apply to that stuff to the child relationship. Anything you want after your death, you better put it down, because even if you don't leave a will, and you only have one person to leave it to, a beneficiary, then it's still got to go through probate. If you leave a will, everything is sorted out. There's no delay. There's no process. And you even have to be careful about your executor.
Yes.
I'm looking into the will stuff now.
I hear.
And because if you don't pick the right executor, if you don't have the right executor, if they have a problem with one person versus the other, they can slow, because they have control.
What, favoritism or something?
Oh, yeah, they can say, let's say you and Candy are sisters, and I'm the executor, and I have a problem with Candy. Well, I could slow her payments and speed up yours, and whatever the deal. I could find all sorts of mischief to delay.
So the executor is very important.
Very important. So, if you have, sometimes it's best to just leave to the beneficiary to be the executor. Because they're the ultimate control of what they're going to get.
Because then you're going to get into people planning it the way they want it.
Oh yeah, it's all about.
That's it.
Where
dollars, you want to.
What's that? It's dollars. They want their stuff,
Right. It's not,
greed. It's a greed thing.
It's a rough thing. And like he says, you just need to state your wishes while you're here. It's kind of unfair, really, to leave it to your family members to kind of guess what you wanted. Yeah. Because even though you're gone, they still have to carry that with them. Like, is this what my mommy would have wanted? Is this what my daddy would have wanted?
Especially they want it first.
Some people don't even.
And some siblings don't get along. You have family members who don't get along. So, Candy, you want cremation. I say, not my good ma. I want to bury her, and it's a problem.
And guess what? And it's one thing when emotions are high between siblings that are from the same parents. Imagine siblings from different marriages, and that's when it gets really sticky, because
not uncommon.
It's quite common. 95% of the families in the Bahamas.
Well,
it's very common. So
I want to wish you happy independence. That's how I interrupt now.
See, you see that? I can soon stop coming.
You can stop. Give you the full 15.
No, she didn't.
I get no 15. I barely get 5.
Okay. 5 minutes. Okay. Well,
no, but I have to go. You know what? No, that's all you get today. That's all you got.
I'm sorry, Candy, but just know it wasn't me.
Yeah, it wasn't her.
It's never you, Rogi.
Yeah, I know.
It's never you.
I want to thank you, then. I want you to wish you a happy independence.
Okay.
See what that shirt says? Smooth what? Oh, it's
Smooth,
Tennessee
like
whiskey.
Tennessee whiskey.
Yeah.
Hey, Rogi! And Rogi bought me this shirt. No, it's a lie.
All right, listen, we got to go. Our guest this afternoon is Simeon Hall, Bishop Simeon Hall. We got some real interesting things to talk about. We'll be back in a few minutes. That'll be our next. That'll be our next fight. That'll be our next fight after this one. I've always said that this is a kind of a cold introduction, Simeon Hall.
Are we on?
We're on.
I never know.
This is a kind of a cold introduction to Simeon Hall, but I've always said, we've had several fights in the Bahamas over the years. First one started with Sunday shopping, then with the referee, with the gambling, then now it's with marijuana. Now I guess the next thing will be left is praying at the beginning of meetings. Anyway, our guest this afternoon is the one and only Simeon Hall. Bishop Simeon Hall. And whatever he's doing, I'm sure it's emeritus. So I'll put that there. I think that's the appropriate term for folks.
I'm still preaching. That's not
his
emeritus.
No? You're not preacher emeritus?
No, I still preach.
So you were recently down in Jamaica.
Oh, yes. Just.
And for the last 2 years, you've been on a member of the CARICOM Commission on marijuana.
Yeah.
And the last time you were here, you were very enlightening in terms of how you had gone 360 or 180, I don't know which, on your view on this thing. And I suppose you put it in a way, well, that's how life is. You learn and you progress. But what is obviously there's a kind of wave in terms of mindset where 10 years ago we'd be all ostracized just sitting here talking about this. But what has given rise to the wave of mindset change or shift in mindset toward this thing?
I think people worldwide are standing on their own and asserting their individuality and not afraid to express it. We see it now in the 5-year intervals that people have been giving governments, locally and abroad. People are expressing themselves more, and it's even in the church. But for me, I'm 71 years of age now, and
from what the name of the corner is now, I forget.
Choknegali.
Yes, Choknegali.
That's the funniest name.
It was a dead-end corner off Market Street, and I say to people, I brag about how I've preached on every corner of the world. Every continent, and it's a long way from Choknegali to the four corners of the earth. And my lesson there is that where you were born need not determine where you go in life. But people are more free. People are more assertive. And I think that's good. Now, you can't throw away everything. You need some boundaries. I just heard Sir Arthur Folkes saying, before you make some changes, you have to see what value the parameters have established over the years. Young people want things change immediately. I remember when I came home from school in 73, I was made the Baptist Young People's President. Can you imagine me? I was the president of the youth arm of the convention. And we went to one church, Transfiguration Church there on Market Street, and we introduced liturgical dancing. We got the girls
Ed's favorite.
Interpretive dancing.
In the leotard, the tafia, and all that. And one lady got up, one lady preacher, she's dead now, she got up and made a motion that we should be excommunicated from the Baptist Convention. I use that example to say, I thought now they're in almost every church, even in the Anglican community.
Everywhere.
So, progress.
It's ubiquitous.
I once thought of God as an old white man with long white beard with a big stick, and when you slip or something, he beats you back. I don't have that kind of concept anymore. So the metamorphosis, the mental metamorphosis you go through brings change. I think our people throughout the Caribbean realize that they have been gooseyed for too long with our colonial past, and they are asserting now their rights.
Are you a liberal pastor?
In some things, I can be very liberal.
Socially liberal.
Yeah, socially liberal. Theologically, I'm kind of middle. The corn, the cane, the sugar, and in our case, the salt, we've been exploited. And people are saying, this is my turf. I want a part of it. So this thing with marijuana, I kind of got into Mr. Fred Mitchell asked me about 2 years ago if I would serve on the committee, and I said, I'll see what it is. Mind you, in 1970, I think it's 79, when Bob Marley came here, I raised the question as to whether we wanted a Rastafarian guy smoking marijuana as an example for our children. The thing was sponsored by the late Mrs. Hannah and Miss Nottage and several other persons. Right. And I raised the question whether this was a good example to put before our children. I now have a deeper appreciation for Bob Marley when I listen to his lyrics. But I didn't know that then. I didn't even listen. I just knew that's reggae and he's Rasta. And so these prejudices that we have, they've caused world wars. And I'm saying I'm open to talk to anybody. Once you're a human being, you qualify for a conversation. I don't care the looks or man or woman. So for me, I'm always willing to explore. And so that's how I got into all of this. I never smoked a cigarette.
I was going to ask you.
I do not smoke marijuana, but the medicinal value and benefit of marijuana is indisputable.
Yeah, indisputable.
And so that's what the science of it. In the last two years, Brother Fields, I have gone into books and science and data that I never knew existed. And ignorance...
Because the powers that be, and when I say that, the whole economic structure doesn't want you to see that stuff.
No, they want you to see it, and the pharmaceutical conglomerates, they are guiding how we see this thing, and for their own selfish benefit. Marijuana was criminalized when America came out of prohibition, and they didn't want a competition with liquor.
Yeah,
that's how it got started. And the blacks and the Indians and people of color started fooling with the weed, and it gave competition to the alcohol. Alcoholism does more damage to people, to families in the Bahamas than marijuana does. Now, I'm not promoting.
You're just stating the facts.
All I'm saying is the facts are there, indisputably. It's there, and I just like to read. I consider myself to come a long way in my mental development, and one of the things, my last point come to mind, I'm a preacher, I get paid to talk.
Go ahead.
But one of the things that came home to me, and I want to underscore, and thank you for this privilege, I went to 9 different island nations, and most of them are not developed as the Bahamas is.
In the Caribbean.
But the willingness of these people to come and to have open dialogue with mutual respect, blacks and whites, Indians, different ethnic backgrounds and different religions, all came in these town hall meetings, and never once did I experience any denigrating of a person with an opposite view or politicizing your PLP or your FNM or your Ma picky head and all them things, for which we are noted.
Yeah, we love it off with
That's what I'm saying. So the first thing I'm suggesting to the government is let's have an intelligent national conversation about this social phenomenon.
If marijuana is decriminalized, which I suspect it probably will be,
there's a way of moving now.
Yes. Do you have any concern that this could possibly be opening Pandora's box and people wanting other drugs to be decriminalized?
Well, one thing about marijuana that I've learned is that when it is by itself, you got to overdose with marijuana. It's almost, you got to take a truckload of it. You don't overdose with marijuana. Yeah. Nobody dies.
No, that's fine.
That's what I'm saying. But you see, that's why I'm saying my first point is the discussion and regulation. We are not good in our context to regularizing things. So, and then human beings being as we are, anything pure or good that we touch, we corrupt it. So we have to be guarded. I don't want to be a part of anything that would make it worse. One of the strong points in our presentation was that since the human brain is still developing up to 24, we should keep it out of the hands of children and adolescents. Now, how do you do that?
In the same way that we espouse, I met and fail for alcohol.
Same way.
But the point, at the least, is that you have that in place. In my, for instance, just the other day in my facility where I work, someone came in, tried to get into a nightclub, and had a fake license. That person ended up being charged because we did not admit the person. We not only didn't admit him, he became very violent, very abusive, and the police was called and he was carted out. Okay. There are ways to detect false IDs, et cetera, et cetera. People will always find a way. But the point I want to make also too was that you said that Fred Mitchell point was interesting because I had a conversation with Mr. Mitchell many years ago, and the government of the Bahamas, for the point I want to highlight, and that is how we have destroyed lives. I mean, I want to really be conscious of that. Destroyed many of especially young men's lives. We didn't do it. We told the United States we wanted to do it, and they said no. If we did it, then they would threaten our what do you call it, pre-clearance and all that sort of thing, because they didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so how does this now come into play? Because the federal government in the United States still does not recognize decriminalization. In fact, you can't bank your money. There are people in the States.
Canada does.
Canada does.
Yes.
But I'm saying now, how does it play if the federal government opposes it? They can't even punish their own states, but then they come down on countries like ours.
Well, the golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rule.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is I don't think we should rush into it, but I would like to encourage Bahamians to go online to study this what I call a social phenomenon, and how America is calling now the ganja fields agricultural crops or something.
Cash crop.
So they're working around it. America. Martin Luther King used to say, "America is good, is great, but it isn't always good." And that's indisputable. They do what they want to do. All that. My advice as a pastor, I tried to stay in the role as a pastor. Look, let's not open the Pandora's box. Let's protect our people. But at the same time, we have a right. Marijuana grows on every island nation throughout the Caribbean. What did God have in mind when he allowed this? Or he caused the birds to drop the seeds about the place?
Well, let me ask you another question.
Let's talk. Let's talk.
Bishop Hall, could we not, one of the steps take, and I noticed in Philadelphia, and I don't know if you say you've been reading a lot on this stuff, the police department in Philadelphia, before, I think it might still be illegal, just simply said, look, we're not going to be pursuing this. It's not, we're just not going to put people in jail for this. We can figure out the other stuff later. And how we're going to handle this, but do we have to keep, in 2018, putting young men and women in jail, giving them a criminal record, not disallowing them for them to be able to get a job, to get a visa, whatever it comes with? Should we be doing that at this stage?
An item in our report talk about social injustice, specifically young black men. Because the rich and the affluent, they could smoke in their house and the safety and their environment, right. They protected. But young black man on the street, right. And Dennis Enos it was who said,
they choose to smoke it on the street. They can also smoke it in their house and be undetected.
Well, true. They want to spiff off and all that. But don't forget, if a young man gets a record, and he can't go get a job, he can't go to Miami, which Dennis Enos said was in the Bahamians' inalienable right to go to Miami. So these things. But we have to protect the social life of these young men. They get a spank on the hand, but they get a record. and that record follows them the rest of their lives. A man kills somebody with drunk driving, and he don't go to jail.
And he
don't get a record. These are the inequities we have to talk through. My first and primary point, Brother Fields, Miss Longley, is let's talk.
No, you used to talk to
Katie.
Miss Smith. That's a Smith over there.
Sorry, baby. I'm 71. I have nice.
That's your
license.
Yeah.
Excuse you.
No, we have to talk. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Let's respect each other's. Some of the talk shows are dumbing down the issues, man. These are some of them mental midgets. Let's talk.
Yeah.
I was amazed to go in rooms and see white people and black people. You don't see that in the Bahamas. See PLPs and FNMs, and they're there within the context of, look, whether we do this or not. That was the issue, and that's what people stuck to. I was made by.
You talk about the social inequities, but every parent, regardless of their socioeconomic or racial background, lives in fear that their child could be caught, because they could be anywhere, could be caught, and then that is a problem. I mean, that's why I think the discussion is so wide open, because everyone knows that they could be impacted by it, right? That you could have a child in college who's doing very well in college, comes home, could just be in the car with someone smoking, and boom, So there's a whole lot of things, and it just seems so disproportionate to me.
And we waste so much the police time, the court time, with all these, a young man with a small amount of marijuana, he has to go to the court, then he goes to that hellhole up the road where he has to be on remand and all that. Come on,
You're training him to become a criminal.
So what law reform is necessary. And I don't consider myself an expert in this, I try to read my Bible every day. But I believe the Word of God has social application. We haven't died and gone to heaven yet. And Jesus himself prayed, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. We got to stop trying to make heaven pretty and make down here pretty where people live. So that's been my whole thing, with a strong social conscience. You could cuss me out and call me everything but a child of God, and that's okay. Look what they did, Jesus.
You said you've done a lot of research, and of course you have spent your time on the commission. What have been the downsides of marijuana? Because, I would imagine that there might be few, but what downsides have been presented? Because we always just talk about the benefits of
that's
it.
True. That's true.
Let's have some balance.
Very fair question. The fact that we had a psychiatrist on the commission who talked about the human brain, the lobes and all that being developed up to 24. Some people go as far as 28. And they say any chemical that bothers you could alter that. Just like alcohol and cigarette. Okay? But we sprinkle holy water on that. So there are some negatives that we should be careful of. The economic benefits people are talking about, and pharmaceutical companies, and some of the hardest or harshest opponents have been pharmaceutical companies.
Understandably.
And most of the medicine you take now say it will heal this thumb, but you're going to lose one leg and two eyes. And might cause death.
I like the antidepressants, which says could cause suicide.
Yes.
Why you're taking
would I want to take that?
And you're not going to jail for that. No, see, this is the thing. The positives and negatives exist with everything. We are not going to deny that. But one of the negatives of all of these things isn't that you go to jail.
Yes.
You can drink, but you don't go to jail.
Right.
You can take pharmaceuticals, but you don't go to jail. You
can kill under the influence and you don't go to jail.
I mean, now, if you want to go the reverse of that, and this is what I've always said, Bishop, is then make all illegal. The main thing is don't be hypocritical about it. I don't want that to be the case because I think people have to make their choices, right? But if you're going to be fair, if you're going to close the inequities, then all have to be illegal. You can't just pick and choose, one day this is illegal, that's illegal, because some lobby decided it's going to be that way.
That's what's happened. The liquor merchants started this whole thing. The liquor merchants, and liquor does more damage to families than any other drug.
And no one is making any attempt to
we don't make any noise. Yes, 186 million people use marijuana, according to the world.
186 million?
Yes.
Well, and alcohol?
You better triple that.
I think you better go billions.
Yeah.
It's just a way. Listen, not only that, if you and I don't know if their studies took you to this place, if you look at all cultures, every single culture, all cultures have had some sort of spiritual thing that they do where they get, altered states and all that sort of thing. In many cases, and I imagine with the Rastafarian especially, it is a cultural thing. I'm not saying that's the case here, that people would use that excuse. But if you look at any of the indigenous tribes in most places in South America and other places, they all use peyote, and in the Indian world. We're going to take a break?
Yeah.
We'll be back in a sec with Simeon Hall. We talk about independence. Okay, Simeon Hall is our guest this afternoon. We're going to stop talking about the weed. I don't want people to think that Simeon Hall is obsessed with the weed. Boy, I tell you though, Simeon Hall, I tell you one thing. I've known you for a very long time, and it is indeed refreshing, I think the word is. And by the way, I say this about Rogan Smith all the time. When you can talk to people who've had a particular point of view, and for whatever reason, they can study something, learn about something, and come to a different position and have that discussion. Let's talk in the same kind of ilk about independence, because I think that we have been completely void of knowing and understanding this concept of independence. We kind of now have commercialized it, so that we have, the flags and the shot glasses and the, all of the it's entrepreneurial, yeah. Mm-hmm. But do we really feel it? Do you think? Do we even know what we're independent from?
No. Well, I think it's a process. It takes 45 years is a generation. Yeah. But I don't think we were prepared mentally for the political acquisition of independence. I think more should have been said to us. Now, mind you, Mugabe it was who said the people have a right to rule themselves even if they do so poorly.
And he knew about
that. He was the expert.
He was a big practicer of that.
He was. But no, I wouldn't want to go back to pre-independence. I think we should move forward. But I think more, again, cerebral approach should be done. It is still tonight, you will see more FNMs there than you see PLPs.
So because it's this time.
Because it's their time. Mm-hmm. And that's a damn shame. Mm-hmm. There's no other way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If the reverse were true, it'd be the same thing. Yeah. I mean, 45 years. 45 years you've lived half.
It's like saying if you go to the United States for independence, if the Republicans were only Southerners there and only Northerners.
At 45 years, you have lived half of your life's expectancy. So you halfway there. Mm-hmm. You should have it together. You see.
But I think it's because there was no struggle. And when I say struggle,
indeed, yeah,
you know what I mean. I mean, obviously there was some struggle for majority rule and all that, right?
Fought
blood and tooth, and
It means something.
Yeah.
In Jamaica, Jamaica has a sense of patriotism with their dollar being 133 to 1. They like Jamaica. That's it. They're proud. You could count the flags on the street right now. We didn't have to struggle to get it. We got
some
it
guys went
easily.
to England, they signed some documents, thing, and they came
The
back
late
and
Dr.
said,
H.W. Brown was the chaplain from Bethel there, and he went and prayed over them and all that.
That's the thing. We came back, we're independent.
We came back, we're independent.
And we had the flag raising and the guy with the flag with the feathers on the hat.
The struggle continues. You remember the Vanguard? Dare to struggle, dare to win.
Yeah.
We need to continue, and perhaps our children will be more mature and more appreciative for. I heard a brother, George Smith, on the way here, talking about how the number of Bahamians, I think, was something like 183,000. Now it's 300.
Yeah.
Odd. The per capita income was 13,000. Now it's 25,000. So there are areas where we've developed.
Yeah.
Black Tuesday. Remember that one?
Yeah.
I was working as a carpenter helper with Corley Construction. I was a dropout of school at the age of 15. I saw all these people going up East Street, and I going that way, and crazy fella that I am, I say, hey, I ain't going to work today. I'm going with these people. I went out there on Black Tuesday. Didn't know in the world what it was there. It just looked. I was 15 years of age. But that's where I was then. I now have served as president of the Bahamas Christian Council. I preach on every island nation in the Caribbean. I preach on every continent in the world. And so, for me, I personalize what we have done over the last 45 years.
Yeah.
I was in the dumps when we started, but now I have a measure of notoriety and success.
But
and
we don't have that. I could be wrong, but I don't think we have it in the collective. So like you say, you personalized it. And it has a lot to do with the fact that, and I'm very concerned about this, and every time I watch things like, and Rogan hears this, watch things like Roadshow, Antique, etc., I get this thing. Because I feel that we have not even recorded. Do you know, for instance, Jerome Sawyer was here, who tells us how at ZNS they had the archives, the tapes and stuff in a building, like
sitting
a shed, sitting on the floor. The hurricane hit, everything is destroyed. We don't have a thing about history.
No, we don't like.
And
history.
so we can't connect to it. So you got to connect, man.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just kind of floating around.
And our hope is in our children and grandchildren. They have a deeper appreciation sometimes, because
I don't know, Sam.
They think it was always as it is today, But
let me give you an example. We're going to have a thing called the tattoo. Okay? Now, this gives me no hope of feeling that we have let the past go. And in fact, not only have we not let the past go, the things we celebrate about the present, i.e., the police shooting the crook, that's a part of the thing now. You know that, right?
That's most appropriate in 2018.
But you don't have that. You don't have at the Independence on the Mall in Washington D.C. someone showing how you blow up a tower. I mean, it's not a thing. You celebrate the successes, etc. You don't celebrate your independence by having a reenactment of a policeman chasing down a criminal with a gun. It's just insane.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is that we're trying to do here.
Well, I think what we need is to forge and call for more national conversations.
Yeah.
If the same people keep doing the same thing, we end up with the same results.
We have the march with the cars and the thing.
Why not throw it open? Why not?
And we said that the last time too. Mm-hmm.
You had. This is no disrespect to him, for instance, but I won't say the name. You had the gentleman, I know him, you know him, who organized the independence thing for 30 years. Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to celebrate, you go out there, you have picnicking, you feel a part of something. But it's got to be some weird type of production that we got going on that has no relation to, it's like we're trying to invent a history. And you get that feeling?
My spirit of nationalism should go higher than my politics.
Oh, well, definitely.
You know,
Definitely.
we should really feel good about being Bahamian.
Yeah.
Regardless of who I voted for in the last
or not.
or not, you know, and we
Well, I
haven't.
think, you know what, I think in fairness to our people, that the people who are on the grass have that. The people who show up on the side of the hill,
Okay.
but the people who are in the invited seats,
Yeah.
only one group of people getting invited this time. And then next time when you see what I'm saying? So yeah, the officials. But the people on the ground, I think Bahamians and that.
I can't even, just you mentioning that, I don't like that whole official lineup either, you know, because we are all one. We're all the same Bahamians.
No.
It ain't no
you are less
distinguishing.
important.
Yeah, I don't like
because
that.
your butt can sit on grass
But
and
mine
their
has to
butt
be
can
in a
sit on the
chair.
official chair.
I really have a problem with that.
Look at somebody looking at me. Man.
No, seriously.
But you know, see, we've mimicked. You see what happened there, right? We mimicked the past. We mimicked because it was as if we felt so deprived by not being in those chairs that it was important for us to maintain the chairs so that we could feel important or good about ourselves. And then all you've done is replicate the class society again.
Well, I'm an optimist by nature, and so I'm hopeful that whereas we've had some social changes, some political changes, even some economic changes, I'm praying that mentally that we will continue to move and progress. But when you've traveled, as I have, and you see these things, you wonder, we could have done much better than we've done, and hopefully we will continue to move down.
What would you have liked to have seen 45 years later? In 2018, from 73, what would you have liked to have seen this country develop into?
Well, one thing could be where we can have national conversations on issues without politicizing.
Being in civil.
And having civil conversations. I think that's a primary thing. And
that is very poignant. Yeah.
You know, we don't do well in that area.
No.
So.
And how do we then? So you are a leader, and you now have, in my view, graduated to the point of, statesman type thing. And how do we, therefore, when we're having these conversations, these public conversations, how do we go about actively denigrating those that would seek to denigrate? In other words, how do we remove them from the discussion? If you want to do that, rather than entertain them, move them away.
I'm not sure there's a specific way other than to lift it. Intelligence, somebody said at the University of Miami, intelligence is a predisposition to explore alternatives. That's why your great-grandmother, who had no education, yet she survived all them things they threw at her. She just had an innate ability to find another way. And so were we to, another way, when people draw a small circle to exclude you, you draw a bigger circle to include them. And if we could live by those principles. Now, if you are...
Where are you coming up with all these things?
Man, I'm 71. If your biggest concern is your own personal survival, it's difficult to get involved in PTA and go to the this and that. Because my thing is, how I can feed these 6 children that I have for 4 different men. How am I going to do this? I can't be good. I can't even put no money in church. I gotta watch out for myself. So our personal survival.
Right. We are survivalists. We are a survivalist nation.
Yes. Canon Thompson at St. Agnes used to say most Bahamian women live by a survival morality, whatever it takes to survive.
Yeah, because they have those children to support.
Because they have the children to support.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Simeon Hall, that like you say, discussion, but I think that there's got to be some sort of. One of the things we talked about this budget that recently happened was that it may have some, maybe unintended, but may have some structural impact on the mindset of people in terms of how to make choices.
And discipline yourself.
And discipline, right?
Yeah.
So how do we then, in terms of other social behaviors, find ways? And it has to, I think it has to be by law. I think it has to be by enforcement of law. Yeah. That if, for instance, we talk about littering, that the littering is a choice. If you litter, there should be draconian measures to deal with that. And you know what the choice is? You don't have to litter. Okay? And when I say draconian, I mean, like, for instance, you throw something at your car should be impounded for 3 months. That's draconian to a lot of people.
Yeah, but
right?
You want to riot now.
No, exactly.
Why do you want to riot?
You talked earlier about somebody smoking weed and you saying they shouldn't be in prison and all
I
that
didn't
stuff.
say throw them in jail.
I said
impound
you
the car.
spoke. No, listen. What I'm saying is you want the punishment to match the crime. I don't want someone's car impounded for 3 months because they littered. I think enforcement is the first step.
Well, listen. Again, if you do litter, and I'm just trying to make this very clear distinction. First of all, you are invading my space.
What if they walk in?
Then we can find some. Then put them in a tracksuit, one of them suits, and make them clean up litter for 2 months.
Well, I'm more down with that.
Okay. The point is, something has to be done. See, back in the big old Singapore,
I'm down with that.
back in the big old Singapore swimming hall,
extreme.
where we all applaud, right? You get some lashes. They draconian.
You want us to be Singapore?
I don't want
you don't want us to be Singapore.
You can't put chewing gum on the street.
Wait, no, you can't chew gum on the street.
You can't even bring that.
You can't sell gum.
You can't sell gum. Okay. So we all laud that society because they're orderly, and so maybe we have to be. And I'm not saying we go to those extremes, but maybe we need to now say, look, it is time for the betterment of this country to put in some very serious ramifications, enforce them, and people then have to then make the choices. Do I wish to lose my car for a month?
Right.
Or do I wish to not litter? You don't have to litter.
Yeah. Draconian measures.
You don't.
Yeah,
but you do. But you do.
No, you don't have to smoke weed.
You're just saying that, like, you should know that your actions have consequences.
Yeah,
you need to be aware of that.
And by the way,
smoking
if you smoke
outside
weed,
your house has consequences.
I agree. If you smoke outside your house, then there should be a reaction to that. Okay, not jail. But there should be, just like if you get, as Simeon Hall pointed out, if you get caught with homicidal, vehicular homicide, you get your license suspended and all that sort of thing. Things happen. Okay?
People must feel good about themselves before they feel good about their environment. And, we need to make people feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't do their environment. You throw trash because you see trash there.
Yeah. You don't care.
You don't care.
Yeah.
And then if they felt a part of their community, well, I have some say in this community, so I'm not going to allow litter to come around. But if I don't, then...
Well, I'm hoping, and I hope they call on you, Simeon Hall. In fact, I'm going to ask them to call on you because they're putting together people that they need to speak on it. I hope with the introduction of local government in New Providence, and by the way, you see some of it in the Family Islands. I was in the Family Islands and I saw where, the streets are generally clean, generally. And their degree, by the way, of putting up flags, et cetera, is far more accentuated in those places than in New Providence. But maybe with this introduction of local government, maybe people will begin to feel more pride in their community. Yeah,
and it certainly will put a dent in crime.
Yeah,
because if people feel good about their community,
right?
Hey, this is my community. What you doing here? Why are you doing this?
Right. Well, Simeon Hall, it's been a pleasure having you. I thank you for coming on short notice. I know you just got back from Jamaica on Sunday.
Saturday.
You ain't bring nothing back from here. No, last time you were here, we fed you.
Oh, that's true.
Last time you were here, we fed you. You ain't bring me back no patty?
I didn't bring nothing.
Okay. His mother was a big patty and baked crab, yeah.
I love baked crabs.
All right, well, thank you, and happy independence to you.
To you. I wish the Bahamas well. I believe, as Miles Monroe used to say, God still lives here, but we must not kill him.
He got to say his way. All right. Thank you very much. And to everyone out there, happy Independence. Nick, we'll see you on Thursday. We'll see you Nick 1 and Nick 2.
Thank you.